to the May 9th meeting of the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission. We'll run through first the script for remotely conducted hybrid open meetings. We're using Zoom for this meeting, which allows the public to participate in the meeting as an attendee. And we'll request that members of the public provide their names for the purpose of keeping accurate meeting minutes. Attendees must register to participate. The registration link is unique to the meeting and can be found in the description of the government live feed. We'll call on those that have raised their hand in the order they were raised, and all questions should be directed through the chair. The preliminary matter, my name is Arthur Gasparo, I'm the chair of the Nantucket Airport Commission. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons participated in the agenda are present and can hear me. Sitting here with me tonight, we have Commissioner Buscarin, Commissioner Marks, and online we have Commissioner Topham. Mrs. Topham, can you hear us?
Am I on?
Welcome, and you can hear us. We
I can hear you, yes.
Great. And then anticipated speakers on the agenda, Mr. Lasden.
Here.
And then we have Mr. Cox here with us from CHA Companies. The open meeting is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. During public access does not ensure public participation unless required by law, and the meeting will feature public comment convened by video conference. And for that, please note that the meeting is being recorded. And be careful, be aware if you are not screen share your computer and you broadcast by any cap provided recording. Recording materials provided members of the body are available on the town website unless otherwise noted. For the first item on the agenda, we cover some ground rules, and I'll introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I'll go down the line of members, inviting each to provide comment, questions, or motions. And please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. And please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait till I yield before you and state your name before speaking. If you wish to engage in conversation with other members, please do so through the chair. Take care to identify yourself. And for items of public comment after members have spoken, I'll afford public comments to those of the public that are here, as well as who have joined via Zoom. And you will state your name, be acknowledged by, and speak to the chair. And finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. Again, welcome to the Commission meeting for May 9th. Meeting being both audio and video recorded. With that, we'll turn to the agenda. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns with the agenda as published? We'll consider that adopted by unanimous consent. We have draft minutes from April 11th. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns with the April 11th minutes?
No.
Okay, we'll consider those adopted by unanimous consent. We have to ratify the April 12th and April 26th warrants. Are there any questions and or a motion to ratify those two warrants?
I'll make that motion.
A motion that's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Marks? Aye. The chair votes aye. With that, we will open up the floor to public comment for any items that are not otherwise on the agenda. You're here with us, and if you're online, you can wave at me or raise your virtual hand. I'm not seeing any, so we will move on to Hangar 8 discussion, which I'll turn it over to Ed Carver.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a set of figures in the packet beginning on page 25. I presented them previously, and I won't dwell on them except to jump ahead to the updates on page 29. On this page, I've added some clarifications of the potential use types and added a basic rate structure and revenue estimate for each type. I do want to note that the $2.09 is a ground lease rate for the entire lot, or for the lot portion, and the $12.50 is for the interior hangar only. Let's go through that slide very quickly. For this property, I see three general use types: aeronautical use, non-aeronautical, and airport use. For the aeronautical use, I have four potential subtypes. This hangar could be modified to be an aircraft hangar at a ground lease that could bring a little over $45,000 per year. It could continue as a portion of a hangar for miscellaneous storage at $12,500 per year. We could expand that storage type to the entire hangar at $31,000, a little over $31,000 per year, or expand it into a freight operation from an existing freight operator such as UPS, FedEx, Cape Air, or someone yet unknown to us at $45,980. Currently, the hangar is being used as a portion for miscellaneous storage on a month-to-month basis, and there's no rush from airport management to discontinue that use. On a non-aeronautical basis, this could be a property for any commercial business. For me, an auto shop comes to mind. It could be a landscaping shop, any one of a number of other non-aeronautical uses that could probably generate just under $80,000 per year. And then for a potential airport use, this building in the lot could be used for storage of ground service equipment, office space. It wouldn't generate revenue, but I reflected sort of a avoided cost of building purpose-driven structure of $187,500 a year, and that assumes a new building cost of $1,500 per square foot, which may be high, may not be. Airport staff recommendation at this time is for the commission to consider an airport use. We have an immediate need for ground service and maintenance equipment storage, maybe not immediately for this summer. It's summertime, this equipment will be outside being used, but come late fall and winter, we would be looking to house it somewhere. It would avoid debt, taking on debt to build a replacement or a similar structure. And it's also the lease commitment. If we do take on the facility and find it's underutilized, we could turn it back around to an aeronautical lease. One of my concerns is if we lease it out now to a long-term 20 or 30-year lease, it's spoken for the duration, and we may have missed an opportunity. Again, this isn't, I promised I would return on this item. I'm not looking to rush into a decision necessarily for this meeting, but I am looking for the commission's opinion and direction on which way they'd like to see this hangar go.
Thank you, Mr. Carver. Commissioners, any thoughts or input? How would you this?
Yeah.
Marks?
I think if you have a potential use for it, then you should hang on to it. And then fill it whatever you decide you don't. Like you said, if you can store stuff on this side of the runway. Opposed to going all the way to the other side or whatever makes sense. Once you get it up, like you said, that it's gone. It's expensive to get that.
We're looking out 5 to 10 years. What do you anticipate? How much more space is the airport going to need? We're going to be buying more vehicles, or are we going to need this space in the 5 to 10 year period? I think that's the way to look at this.
The space we need right now is for overflow equipment, whether it's snow removal equipment, lawn mowing equipment, or our GSC. We've taken on additional ground power units and tugs. We have a calculation. I don't know what that is right now, is sort of square foot basis if you identify the footprint for each piece of equipment. But I think some of that is also dependent on the commission's goals. I think noise abatement is a good one. We've provided additional GPUs on the FBO side of the house while requiring commercial operators to bring and manage their own on on the larger carrier side. So it's potentially a philosophy related to capital acquisition and cost recovery. But right now, I'd like to think we have need for a 20 by 60 or a 40 by 40 pole barn for equipment, if that makes sense.
Is it completely full now?
Right now, this building hangar 8 is empty. We're not utilizing it. We're renting out a portion, I believe, 1,000 square feet to a tenant. And it has 2,200 or 2,500 square feet available.
When does that tenant go?
The tenant is month to month.
Okay, so you could terminate that. Does it make sense to move equipment from this location all the way over to the GA area? It seems like a long way to go to drag GPU equipment and that type of thing.
It depends. Some of the tugs are used, the equipment is typically a boarding ramp right now, which is mostly in use on the north ramp for the air carrier side. Tugs that are used to move general aviation aircraft in and out of the hangars. But the anticipated use is really long-term use for the winter during our off-peak season, when these items aren't used as a daily basis.
We don't have to make a decision, as you said today. We can, it's nice to get some more feedback. We might go take a look at it.
Stop them. Any thoughts? I do see.
No, I agree that we should keep it for our own use.
I have a couple of thoughts, and I also would like to hear from the public, anybody. But one thing that strikes me is that it's a very unique location where it provides a connection between the land side and the air side, and that you have you could have a storage building almost anywhere. You have a spot that is a break in the fence, or not really a break in the fence, but a transition point. And and in thinking about trying to really promote aeronautical uses, especially in that area, what might we be able to do? Looking down the road just a little bit, maybe we keep it in the short term as suggested, but really, like I say, in my mind, you could have a storage building inside of the fence anywhere, but to have sort of infrastructure like this that provides that connection, much like the freight operation or something else similar, in a dream, a flight school, or and that's the one that would be, but again, whether we put it out for some kind of request for interest or something like that to maybe have and really promote an aeronautical use there, I think would be great. But I think the short term, I don't think that because of this hangar rate, we should take the storage facility off of our CIP. I think we should probably run a dual track there to, see about how do you ultimately get some storage long term for our equipment, but maybe it gets bumped down in the out years in terms of how that gets prioritized, and maybe we look at that as part of the master planning process. So those are just a couple of thoughts that I had, but I would be interested to see if we were to put out some, if we would come up with through some further discussion, ideas of what it could be ultimately, if we were to put out I think it's a request for expression of interest, sort of like not a full RFP, but see, through the free market and who might, what might come up there and what could we encourage, I think would be great. So those are, I think that through the summer, maybe we keep or, continue to get the income and there's a use, so that's empty, but before we decide, but I do for the. And I see we have I will accept public comment, Mr. Hagedorn.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. Jim Hagedorn here. I'm the current tenant. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, great. Thank you. I'm the current tenant. I built Hangar 10 next door. And I think we said at the last meet, or maybe a couple meetings ago, the last time this hangar 8 came up, that I do have an interest in putting it to an aeronautical use. And I think maybe there's a way to sort of deal with this. A guy that works for me is on the line as well, Steve Slater. And we have priced out an aeronautical door so that right now on the air side, there's just a big garage door at the moment. But we've priced out a aeronautical door so that we could just immediately go back to an aviation use and put an aircraft in there. And I'd like to do that. So I don't know what process you guys want to use. And I don't think we have to get into a long 20 or 30-year lease. I'm willing to make the investment in the hangar. And I think we could do it so that personally, what do I think? I think that's what would be happening if I wasn't in there right now. They'd be putting GPUs in the winter in there. That would be the use of the building as opposed to using it for an aircraft use. It is unique, Mr. Chairman, in that you're basically on the secure side and the unsecure side with a parking area on the outside. So it's a pretty neat hangar if it had a door on it. And Steve, I don't know if you're on, but what the cost of the door would be. But again, I'm willing to make the investment, and I don't need like a long-term lease, but maybe it's as you guys figure out what you're doing, where it's fair to me making the investment in the door, but it's also doesn't lock you guys into something that's permanent. So there may be something that works out well. It goes to an aviation use. You guys aren't locked up for long periods of time. But it also makes sense for me because I'm showing an interest now, and not that being in there is the only thing, but I am the current leaseholder.
Thank you. Certainly appreciate the investigation into that. And I think if you wanted to reach out to Mr. Carver with that information in terms of cost, and we can, further discuss what our options might be.
Yeah, I'm just trying to express our interest so that we don't end up where you guys make a decision and we never had a chance to sort of participate in the process.
No, it's very helpful. It's
Okay.
great to know that there is that interest there. As we sort of decide how to proceed here.
Thank you.
Good mind. Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to comment on hangar 8? So we'll maybe carry this forward and keep working on it a little bit and see which direction we might want to go with it. And with that, we'll move on to item 5, which is our 30% design drawing for the Port project.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One correction, I designated this item the 30% design drawing. It's a report out and commissioner input for out 30% design drawing.
Oh, I see.
Set that correction to the agenda topic. So as a handout, wasn't in the initial packet, you have the basis of design drawings for the airport crew quarters project. We are currently reflecting a design basis of 8 ensuite apartments and a 9th separate manager's apartment with a full basement with storage and laundry. We envision this as a co-ed facility, so we believe the ensuite feature is important. There's a added cost, but it's not excessive. In my opinion, we've also chosen a full basement. Again, there's some added unit cost, but it's not really that much. And we think it has benefit for both occupant storage and mechanical access. One of the reasons I have this on the agenda now and why we have the project team of Mr. Laston online, Pocox in person, and Ethan Griffin, the architect as well, is that I'm not a builder and I'm not an architect. I rely heavily on the project team to spec this based off of my performance and functional elements and the input from the commission. I think those items are well represented, but I wanted to be sure the commission had appropriate chance to review and provide their feedback as well. So the project team is available for your questions, I am as well. I'm sure they're interested in your comments too.
Thank you. Commissioners, any thoughts?
I like the layout of the, what we're trying to accomplish with this summer help. I would say it's the only thing I think you need more access to the basement. Like a bigger access, if you had to put something down there or
Wider stairs, yeah, maybe like a 5-foot staircase.
you know, at least 4.
Yeah.
And the door to the match, right? A larger door.
Yeah, make that turn.
But yeah, I mean, trying to get a boiler in and out of there or whatever.
Bicycles.
Bicycles, I mean, that's the big thing, if you're gonna cart your bike down there all the time. Yeah, sorry for the point, I mean, even wider than that would make no sense.
When do we fix plans to go to the building department and the HTC? I know timing is a issue.
So these really represent, we took the basic programming kind of like layout of what we're looking for and then just put them into this, which is kind of just showing furniture. And just as part of our process, it's pretty easy to generate the elevations. So we have those, but we're still very early in the process. We still need to get the 2 major portions out of the way, which is the geotech review and the surveying of the site. So technically, we're kind of further along than we might be in general, although we are sort of fast tracked. I'd say maybe not next meeting, but the meeting after that would be a time where we'd be available to present a more kind of concrete example of a 30% schematic design layout.
At which point we'll have a better on costs.
Correct. So that would include the initial cost estimates. We'd be doing some outreach with, the municipal stakeholders in this fire department, kind of getting some feedback on the site, sort of parking layout, their vehicles. I think that's going to be a big component that we're going to need to review. That's not really developed at this point yet.
When do we anticipate going to the HTC building department?
We'll be at that point.
Yeah, it would be at that point. So that would be say 2 months from now.
Okay,
That's our goal currently. Which, given where we're at, seems feasible. We've got the site work is gonna kick off, or we have a kickoff meeting tomorrow. The surveyor says that potentially they can mobilize next week, so there's a lot that's started happening.
But you maybe talk to HDC informally first.
In that's part of our general sort of strategy. We could get on an agenda. We could probably even request that we're at the beginning of agenda because this is sort of a special, unique project. We're not anticipating that HTC is going to necessarily be an issue potentially in this project. We'll do like visibility, and we think that this is an appropriate design. We're not going to propose something that they're going to be totally against. I do think that the fire department, just sort of life safety kind of stuff is probably going to be the bigger, not negotiation, but they're going to have some specifics that we'll need to integrate. Versus HTC, I think it's more of they're welcome that we're getting, we are asking for their feedback, but I don't think they're going to say, that way.
so are you guys builders and architects, or do we have a builder identified?
We don't have a builder identified, but the process is going to be basically, once we get the design completed, we will then put it out to public bid.
Good luck with that.
We have to do it that way.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know, we're concerned about getting this thing up and flying.
But we're gonna do it right.
Of course.
Long-term project, this is gonna be,
Yeah.
significant infrastructure and significant investment, so. Much as I think we're all anxious, I also am willing to pump the brakes slightly if we need to make sure that all the design elements are appropriate. And, that we have it, in case to make sure we get it done, miss something that needs to be thought about when you're having, this many folks living together. Is what strikes me as something that you really, you might have some, small factors that might not quite be the same as if you had, just a regular residential type of a structure. So, is there, and I don't want to get into all of it, just looking at this quick, like one thing, refrigeration, for example, right? Is there enough space for all of these folks to do extra space?
Two refrigerators.
Out of the room, I know we're being cost conscious, but, you know, at the same time, you know, is there enough room in there? Is it something that you want to consider a mini fridge in the rooms, right? Because again, those are the kind of things that I could see. You know, we want to avoid conflict between these folks who are our employees as well, and the smoother everything can go. So I think sometimes some small additional amenities like that, maybe a little bit of extra. I like that very much that, you know, they all have individual bathrooms. I think that heads off a big part of that, and obviously it is a shared kitchen. So, but that was just something that sort of struck me as perhaps something we might want to consider, not a, you know, in that it helps to keep, I think, some autonomy for folks that as they're, you know, living here and working together. And then the 1-story versus the 2-story, I just thought that we should kind of quickly think about that as well. I mean, I'm not looking to double the size of the project, but at the same time, should we be considering even on a portion of the structure, and maybe an exterior stairs, you know, maybe you've already kind of thought that through a little bit, but I know we set out a program for you to work with in terms of the number of rooms, and obviously I do think that in terms of cost, it tends to be the lower you are to the ground, and you know, you're saving some expense there. So I'm not trying to send you down a total sidetrack, but you're already building a foundation and everything else and putting in that infrastructure. Is it something that we might want to balance out and consider as well? Or even a portion of it. And again, I understand that can get further complicated with then staircases and multiple egresses and, you know, it's, but at this 30% level, and we're kind of throwing ideas around, those is something that I was thinking about. And then I think the other stuff for outside, we can get at further down the road, you know, in terms of, you know, I like that you put a grill patio space on there, so it's just kind of a placeholder that is being thought about, that there does need to be some exterior, but obviously the recycling and all that kind of stuff has to be considered. But other than that, I think where we're at with those couple of comments.
Yeah, and this is definitely the time where us looking quickly at, okay, let's say we finish part of the basement, and what would that mean in terms of putting some units down there? You know, that's the time, this is the time to sort of explore that.
That's what I was
Looking at
thinking,
the option.
thinking egress, right?
Right.
Egress windows, want to put all that stuff in now.
Correct.
build it into the foundation.
Yeah, this would be the time to plan for it, even if we don't move forward,
Right.
it's, you know.
Right, grind your pump under, you know, under the slab. I mean, even if we don't go full finish, I think it would be short-sighted not to provide that kind of infrastructure, you know, but for the basement for future opportunities. And that probably is actually as we're kind of here all talking this through, it's probably more cost effective than thinking about a second story. To utilize the basement, right? And
Yeah, so we'd want to make sure that all the
be done.
finishes like on the exterior interior walls, so the foundation are suitable to then use it.
Right. Like, for instance, even if we're not gonna ever finish the basement, or even put in, you know, egress walls or anything, you'd still have perimeter rigid insulation, for instance. So at least some of your thermal barrier is part of it. You know, if you did ever want to finish it at some level in the future, say it was additional, just communal space or something like that, but finished in condition. You know, all that stuff needs to be installed, obviously. Yeah, during construction.
Same with the ceiling height too, right? We'll make sure we.
Correct,
ceiling
correct.
height for,
Yeah.
like,
So we're
Yeah,
looking
well,
nominally
like,
at 10'4", you know,
Yeah.
so it's, you know, we've got reasonable room for ductwork if needed and still clearances, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think as we sort of think this through here a little bit, I like the idea of perhaps making that a design objective. It's the expectation that at least a portion of it would be finished at some point. And you might need a conceptual layout then, I would understand, so that you can get that plumbing put into the slab and that kind of stuff, but I think we want to keep those options open. or, you know, or maybe it's an option on your bidding. Just again, a thought, you know, it's for Newville, I don't mean, we're gonna run up against our appropriation very quickly, without a doubt.
And that's what we're trying to.
So, but at least we would, you know, even if we did that bidding with it as, an alternative option, we'd get a sense of the cost. And that could be helpful too, out of going through this process.
Generally, we try to target 10% optional bid items. So if we need to adjust based upon market conditions, we can either take them if we get favorable pricing, or we can delete them if we need to.
Just thinking aloud, I'm wondering if maybe we show one finished unit down there so that you get it all set up for that, and then don't finish the rest, but have it set up so that it could be finished. And that way there you got a unit out of it, it gets included in the cost. You know, I mean, should the in-suite unit be down there, would be another thought,
Or the alternate, another apartment,
right?
potentially.
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
yes, with Pleasant.
So Ethan, if we go and finish the lower level, do we need now an elevator?
So it's a good question. Generally, if we're providing the same options on the ground floor, we could probably get away with not having the elevator.
Or how would we would just have to excavate a lower level access point so they could walk in, or no?
Right, so we would be providing all accessible units provided at the ground floor level. So anything required would be part of the ground floor, and that would thereby, again, this is a little bit, not negotiation, but it's also a review with the building department, the building commissioner is gonna. That would be my approach to that. As we provide what we need on the ground floor, and then anything else is additional. It doesn't, you know, we're not hitting that threshold where we're gonna provide additional accessible units.
I guess part of the thinking that as you progress to the next sort of level would be, could we be looking at it as additional suites that then still use the facilities on the first floor, or should we be considering it as the standalone apartment as the basement, and then all of the suites are the first floor that share that common facility?
I think they should be more apartments. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, now you kind of like laid this out so that the suites that you need for the summer help are here, for the temporary help, so that's taken care of. So if you're looking to expand the project, then you want to be taking them maybe somebody more that's year round.
To do an apartment, not a suite, and then the people
That way
that
they're not
are
sharing.
living in the basement, it's not a concern that they're coming up to sort of use that other kitchen. So at that point, what's the thing, you know, it's probably not that much more to put in, so it almost like you're in suite
Yeah.
here.
Correct, like a place to start would be just duplicating what we've kind of got on that first floor below, on those boxes. down.
Except the issue with that becomes, if we're looking at this as a modular building,
Yeah,
and then the more you introduce
site build.
on-site build,
Cost.
you're adding time and cost,
Mhm.
which we need to kind of be careful of, because otherwise it's a very fast build. Mostly unfinished. We'd have exposed walls in the basement. If you look at that plan, we have laundry facilities in the basement. We have storage, which you kind of need because there's no other storage
Sure.
out there. So we're left with a limited amount that we can really do on that basement level, but there is a possibility where you could maybe incorporate for the manager's apartment some rec space. It's difficult to work bedrooms into a basement because of the level of egress. So maybe we build in a finished basement space, which would be less expensive, and have maybe a stair from the manager.
Oh, I know, every house I'm working on has bedrooms in the basement, every one.
But this expense for on-site build versus
Yeah, I think we can.
modular.
The apartment in the basement. First, it's not attractive. It's really not attractive. I know it can be, but if I'm gonna take a year-round job and I find out my apartment's in the basement. I think plus, I'm concerned about price. and the cost of this sort of thing. I would rather get this thing up and going in a short term rather than deal with a lot of stick-built problems in the basement. I think exigency, at least my way of looking, is more important than 5 years down the road.
I think as part of our design into the next stage, we look at the pros and cons of what it would need to utilize the basement and then look at the time and the cost associated with it. And we'll come back at another meeting and then give you some more detailed thoughts on what we can move forward with.
So I also think that what Arthur, my point is like, we don't have to build this now. But I think we'd be foolish to not put the provisions in there. For the potential to build it out in the future, if we decide that we need that place to live. Right.
Yeah, and I know, and I think that things have changed a little bit in terms of folks that would, living in the basement has become more attractive than it maybe used to be, given the overall housing situation, and do nice double hung windows and, let some light down there. I think the bigger issue often is probably that you actually had your own space. Right, and even if it's underground that you have, again, I think, but I'm fully concerned as well that, bog it down in the cost. And if we did this kind of same schematic plan and then we just left, we made sure that we could meet code when we needed to, and we left the waste pipes and the venting, what have you, into the slab for when you're gonna build it. That's probably the smartest way to do this, I think. And hopefully stay in budget, but Ms. Topham?
I can't really hear you speaking that much, so I know we're not close enough to your microphones. But I also, when you were talking about basements and stuff, you have to have things that are available for the disabled, I believe. I'm not sure.
So we're gonna take care of that on the first floor, absolutely. There's no doubt about it that this will be an accessible facility. And so we'll keep those uses certainly on the first floor.
Thank you.
Anyone from the public have any comments or thoughts on the crew quarters? Okay,
Mr. Flaherty.
oh yes, Ms. Flaherty.
Be a carbon-free building by any chance? Take the lead?
No, I don't think we're gonna pursue lead certification, are we? No, good, no. We'll do our best to be energy efficient and meet all current codes, certainly. Which I think some of those changes are already headed in that direction, but I don't think we voluntarily want to tack on that kind of cost. Be my sense. But if we get some solar panels on later and get some credits or something like that, then maybe we, something down the road. Anything further? Okay, do you guys have enough sort of feedback? I mean, we're happy to, I think, keep this on an agenda, probably on a monthly basis. I mean, it's an extremely important project for the commission. And we're happy to hear from you, or same questions, or through the manager, obviously, but we're I think all very engaged. And instead I don't think we need subcommittees to work on this. I think the whole commission can wants to have some input on this. If we take a little time each meeting, I think it's worth it.
Yeah.
Great, so thank you. And with that, we will move on to the public hearing to consider proposed revisions to the airport taxis rules and regulations. And I'll start with a short statement. Welcome. This evening, we're holding a public hearing on proposed changes to the Nantucket Memorial Airport taxi rules and regulations. Highlights of the proposed revisions include random checks to be made by the airport law enforcement officer or the ground transportation coordinator. 2, a color copy of the operator permit issued by the Nantucket Police Department is required to receive a taxi permit for the airport. 3, the first cab at the hold line will be utilized for general aviation passengers arriving at gate 36. Taxis are not to park in the disabled spots unless you have a disabled or elderly person on board. If a driver needs to use the restroom, they should notify the taxi behind them. Jumping in front of another taxi will not be tolerated. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Cover.
Good, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a few brief items. I wanted to thank Linda True, our ground transportation coordinator, for drafting the revision. I think it's an important document. It's a short document relatively. And I think Linda's struck a good balance with the revisions, knowing that 335 days of the year, I think we could operate just fine without any sort of policy and policing. It's just those 30 days that can be difficult. But don't want to provide something that's cumbersome just to solve 30 days and be difficult the remaining 335. I consider this an administrative update to our rules. They're several years old. During the past few years, we've made some minor policy and signage changes that need to keep date with policy. And I think the major changes you already identified were at the bottom of page 1. We have some inspection language specific to Ms. True's position and the airport Leo where it comes to taxi cabs. And then we've added in the middle of page 2 some clarifying language regarding general aviation passenger pickup and the use of disabled and handicapped spots for active pickup. Again, I want to clarify, we don't have any current issues with the taxis in this regard. I think they do a good job of self-regulating and meeting the demands from our differently abled passengers, and this update will continue that practice. And I'd also encourage members of the public from the taxi cab operating community to stick around for the next item, where we'll discuss TNC companies. So that'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. And I would just like to, briefly say how much, that I believe I'm speaking for the commission. We appreciate the service, the great service that the taxis and our taxi community provide to the airport and to the travel and public. See you guys out there all the time, and you're there when the people that are using the airport need you. And I just want to express gratitude and truly value what it is that you guys do year after year out there. And with that, we're certainly open to your input as we consider these revisions. And with that, I would open up the is there anyone from the commission that wants to add anything else? You want to hear from the public first? Anyone from the public have anything to add? Yes.
Hi, Diane Flaherty, owner and driver of Diane's Taxi. First of all, I want to thank Noel and Linda for these regulations. You both listened to what we had to say and didn't really change anything, but you clarified everything. The only thing I would like to do is always have the email sent to us. Like today, for this meeting, you sent an email, Linda. It was concise. We knew what was going on. Sometimes things are just handed to us in line if something changes. And you can't always guarantee that we're going to get it. So when we pay the fee, you have our email address, so just email if there's any changes. And I had one question that I just couldn't understand. There's one thing that says, for security and safety, vehicles and their contents are subject to inspection while on airport property. Vehicle drivers and passengers are required to have a valid in bold print form of identification in their possession. I'm just questioning why that's in a taxi regulation. I understand the driver who's already been inspected and has their but the valid form of identification for the passenger.
Mainly because 2 years ago, one of the cabs out there backed up in a very fast manner, almost hits them. And I asked him to see his license. He couldn't show a driver's license or the operator's.
Okay.
And
Yeah, I
to
understand.
eliminate all that, just protect us. Not that I'm ever gonna ask for it, but we should have it on board.
Yeah, but I mean, you would check that when you're doing inspections or something.
Right.
Yeah, so what my thing was passengers are required to have a valid, that's my question.
Okay, we'll take that under advisement.
That was, didn't make sense to me, the taxi regulations.
I didn't.
Ms. Skyber, please.
I didn't pick it up right away. Which section? is
That's
that?
right under the maximum speed, vehicle speed, the airport shall not exceed 15 miles per hour, speeding taxis on airport property, right underneath that. I understand that obviously we need to have our license and you will be.
It's a valid point, right? Do we have the authority
Yeah.
do we have the authority to
Passenger.
require a passenger to have an ID? And I don't think,
No,
I mean, when I pick up my regulars, I go through, you have you
yeah,
have your cell phone, you have your charger, you have your money.
thank you.
Yeah, if I may, I think, Ms. Fodder, you're correct. I don't think we have the need or frankly the authority
Right.
for your passengers to enforce any ID requirements.
Right, let's strike that.
So if you strike that.
that isn't a requirement to be in the airport facility, they have an ID. I'm just curious, the FAA,
I mean, on the non-secure
so
side,
it doesn't matter.
right?
Sometimes people go out just for a restaurant.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I have just a response and a thought in terms of, the email communication, and maybe this is already happening, Mr. Carberg, but, I think it would be good to, once these are adopted, make sure that the regulations are available on the website. With a link. So as well, if you guys get questioned, because of something you're doing, you could always just say to your, if you haven't passed someone that's disagreeable or what have you, look, we're just doing it the way they're making us do it. You can look on their website and also a place for you to check. So I think that we are making sure that, these are transparent and that they could be pointed to and understood from both sides, whether it's passengers, operators, or administration. Is there anybody else from the public? Yeah.
David Barrett, it's okay, I'm just curious, as to the commission, taking into consideration to reinstitute the 3 and 4 spots since 9/11. They were just removed during the 9/11. But explosive, and we had our reasons then. But now I don't see any reason why they couldn't put that 6 cabs back in there. There's no need to have that two cab gap, especially with the demand that's up now.
Mhm.
I don't think it makes any sense to have that. It worked for decades. I mean, I've been 25 years or so. And we did, give up for the spacing from the tower. It was a requirement. But that, with everything the way it is now and the regulations having the safety that's out there, I don't see any reason why we can't utilize that full line. Personally.
Thank you. I would say that's probably not in the regulations, but would be an operational decision. Carver?
So I believe you're referring to the spots that are closer to summer arrivals during. In front of the FAA.
No, not in front of the restaurant.
Oh, the gap.
the gap,
Yes.
this here,
Yeah,
Mr. Garber, right here, these two here.
yeah, I don't see,
We have them forever. It worked and it worked such as fun.
I believe I will have to look into that. I believe that's unfortunately still a standing requirement from post 9/11. Under 49 CFR 1542, I believe, your security directive, that we are still required to keep even short-term vehicle parking free or away from the base of that FAA tower. If not, I'm on the cab's position, it'd be better to fit 6 cabs, or we could fit 4 or 8 where we could fit 6. But I think that's something we will look into.
Taken away from 9/11. I think it would be beneficial, but my own.
we'll look into it for sure.
Thank you.
Any other comments online? Anyone want to raise their hand or? Flaherty.
I just want to thank you for having an in-person meeting. I suggested it at your last meeting. And, nice to see some faces.
Yeah, it's been a while. Thanks, Walter.
10 years.
I appreciate it. Thank you. And commissioners, any thoughts or additional comments on the proposed rules and regulation revisions?
No.
Is there a motion to close the public hearing? Is
I'll make that motion.
there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Public hearing is closed and on the regulations. Is there a motion? I could suggest that there could be a motion to adopt the taxi rules and regulations as drafted, striking the requirement for passengers to have identification.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
I don't know if I have a conflict, but I have a family member who's a taxi driver. So
Uh,
does that matter on this particular issue?
You're free to recuse on that basis if you would want to be
Politically correct?
err on the side of caution. Well, I wouldn't have said that, but if you want to be
I will recuse myself. Thank
okay.
you.
Mr. Buscarin, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you all again. Much appreciated. And that takes us, you guys, it's up to you, but we are gonna have the next discussion item may be of interest to you. Regarding the transportation network companies. We're about to discuss the transportation network companies, so whether you want to stay around or not, just Uber and Lyft. It's up to you. I just wanted to mention that that's our next agenda item and Turo agreements. And with that, Mr. Carberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'd asked for this agenda item for transparency and equity since we just discussed taxi cab regulation. In your packet is our draft operating agreement for TNCs, aka Uber and Lyft. For the previous 5 years, non-Massport airports were locked out of regulating TNCs after several years of legislative advocacy with Martha's Vineyard and other airports. We received a change requested under section 159A.5. Which is exclusive to airports, not necessarily the rest of municipalities. We've since moved to adopt regulations and utilize our existing rates and charges fee structure that we put into place in anticipation of this legislative change, which is to assess a fee for originating fares of $3.25, commensurate with Massport's fee. So I'd hope to be able to present you with signed agreements at this meeting. However, we're just not quite there yet. So instead, I have a 3-part update for you. We are actively negotiating with Uber. I consider them an engaged and good faith partner. They have an airport specific representative who covers the Northeast, has been responsive. And I believe we can have an agreement with them for June. Lyft has been less responsive. I understand they recently restructured in the region. We'll continue to reach out and engage them. And that we are also working on bringing the online car sharing platform Turo under agreements. You can think of them as their Airbnb, but for cars. Our interests here are multiple. We're seeking parity with our traditional rental car operators, operational control, and reporting. Anything else we want to know how big of a business this is at the airport. All indications are that Turo at our corporate level is amenable to airport agreements, but simply we haven't been working on Turo as long as we have on the TNCs. It will take longer to formalize that agreement, and there are a lot of airports dealing with Turo at once to bring them in. That is my update.
Thank you. Well, hopefully we'll have something for the next meeting. So we'll actually enter into an agreement on our exhibit 1 is what you would envision
Correct.
with each of the operators. Okay, thank you. Anyone have any comments or? Okay, pending leases and contracts set forth on exhibit 1. Mr. Carberg.
So we have a very full exhibit for you, which I don't think is necessarily bad. However, I'm going to give a brief description of the items in the exhibit. With the understanding that the commission may want to take one or more out to have further further clarification or more detailed discussion. So I have for you a memorandum of understanding with the Office of Culture and Tourism for our ambassador program. It doesn't reflect a cost, but we do line item transfer to their department salaries for their ambassadors over the summer. I have a counter freight agreement with Cape Air. This is an existing sort of renewal. They operate counter freight and we receive, I believe it's $1 or $2 per package transaction. We have 5 business licenses to conclude the first page for $1,500 each. They're with Ross Rectrick, who ground handles for JetBlue. This is a renewal. We have with Wiggins Airways, who flies for FedEx and UPS Freight. This is a renewal. We have operating agreements for Tradewinds and Tailwinds for their Part 135 operations. The first is a renewal. Tailwinds is a new agreement. And then Gamma Aviation, we have an operating agreement for, it's a remote A&P mechanic. They base a van here with their equipment and the pilot will come over by plane or boat in response to events. Page 2. I have for you a contract amendment to McFarland Johnson Task Order PN11, aka or PFAS Task Order. This is $424,000, approximately $424,000 for our spring sampling. I then have a task order for McFarland Johnson for $67,300. This is for an AIP eligible project, design and bid a new ARC truck to be in place for 2025 for our forecasted fleet change. Then I have a approximately $1.5 million design fee for the Southwest ramp extension. We'll offer a correction to the third line. The airport is carrying a number of ineligible items in the scope, and I anticipate the funding splits to actually be more in line with a 66 to 75 federal and state share and a 25 to 34% sponsor share. With approval required at this time to take advantage of federal funding. I have $40,181 as a contract amendment to Lawrence Lynch Corporation. This item is a follow-up to last month's agenda item where the commission adopted the staff recommendation to provide 50% funding for updated energy costs and phasing changes. It's being done here as a change order, which would close this item out. In advance, Lawrence Lynch passes along their appreciation for your consideration and action. $88,567 for renewal of our 3-year subscription to the OCHI. The OCHI is our emergency management and process automation software. $118,000 for South Shore generator. It's the enclosure for the terminal generator. It is a 72-week lead time. I can only hope that improves as we move forward. $218,000 for a 3-year maintenance and on-call contract for our security software and some of the related hardware. $46,200 for a 3-year AAAE contract for our interactive training software. Well, if you've also still funding. Okay. And we have $114,000 for a 3-year maintenance contract with Global ARF. They were the low bidder in response to an IFB to inspect and maintain our ARF vehicles. I'm proud to say we're sharing this contract with Nantucket Fire. We put it out. We were able to include their emergency vehicles for our mobile contractor utilizing our SRU bay for maintenance. Great. And those are all of the items on the exhibits at your discretion, which ones you'd like to take it out.
Any questions? So we've got some.
What type of
Couple of big
aircraft
ones.
does Tailwind operate?
Tailwind operates an amphibious caravan. So they're operating from the Boston seaport and the Manhattan seaport, I believe, to Nantucket.
And they're landing on wheels here on the runway.
Correct.
Okay.
What else? This is the big one here is the south ramp expansion design, so. And we'll get regular updates through Mr. Lasden. I take it, I'll put you on the spot there, Mr. Lasden. Keep us certainly,
Yes,
as
absolutely.
we look to advance this, hopefully to keep us on track for that grant funding.
Yes, so the,
Advancing this, as quickly, I think, as they can, given the indication that there may be some discretionary funds available.
so we have to put this out to bid the middle of next month to be able to secure the federal funds. So this is a very fast track project.
I thought that's important that the commission be aware of.
Mhm.
The difference in the funding, like here it's 95 and 5. And what was I think you made note, was that some additional items to this or? Because those numbers changed significantly. Well, you referenced numbers were different, much different.
Sure, so it's an estimate that I'm making at this time, sorry, bear with me. So in reference to the south ramp, typically AIP projects are 90% FAA funded, 5% state, 5% local share. For the south ramp, we've added some local items that are important for airport leadership in the community: noise abatement, emissions monitoring, and there are a couple other items involved with that. We expect some GSE storage. These would be our share for the design. Based off of those splits, I'm estimating that the design would be approximately 2/3 to 75%, 2/3 to 3/4 total state and federal eligible. So the airport portion would be around 25%. As a further complicating factor, if there is a motion to accept and move forward with the task force for the South Apron project, I have some additional language for the commission. I'm asking for your approval for that task order as is, but subject to an amendment next month from Mr. Laston to remove the GSE garage from the scope and the fee. What we had done was we had spec'd the berm to include, I think the name is a box culvert or an arch culvert, similar to the bunkers we have in the bunker area for storage. I think it was a great idea. It was a staff idea, but there are a lot of problems with mixing the vertical and horizontal components of that bid. They still end up being expensive. They still need some human safety and life factors. So sort of the bang for the buck is minimal. And that would also help increase the federal and state share split, probably closer to 80%.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other commissioners, any questions, comments on? And I guess the other one we should just take a minute on is the PFAS, if we could, just a little bit more depth of that. That's quite a sizable contract, and I had a brief discussion with Mr. Carberg about it. Maybe you could mention the type of drilling, just to let the commission know why that number is what it is.
Yeah, that's pretty serious.
So 424,000 for our spring PFAS sampling is a lot of money. I looked at this task order. I looked for opportunities to reduce the airplane costs. I want to give Rich and McFarland Johnson credit. I think their oversight costs are kept low. They're at about $11,000 total. The majority cost element that drives this task order is the mobilization of a specialty drilling subcontractor. They actually utilize a sonic drilling machine. It isn't the small sort of skid steer drill rig we've had before. What the driller needs to accomplish is they need to reach a depth of something like 150 or 200 feet to find the lower end of plume contamination. Total cost for that subcontractor is $263,000. It's 60% roughly of the scope. And the rig itself is large and obtrusive. It has a vertical boom height of 33 feet. It's an ordeal to accommodate this on the airfield. I'd rather accommodate the previous style rig, but for what we need to accomplish, that just can't be done without keeping the airfield offline for a lot of the spring and summer.
And is this the required to keep the separation? And why we had to go to this special rig is so that when you drill through, you don't contaminate further down. Is that the reason for that, or?
So my actual understanding is that it's the end of the day, it's the most efficient way to get to depth quickly. There's a tooling and maybe Mr. Lassen can explain this. There is the way it operates with a tooling and a sheathing mechanism that may be the answer that you're asking. But why this is a more appropriate tool for that.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Please.
so yes, the challenge is that in order to define, we've defined the limits of the plume on a plan view, but now we have to define the limits of the plume in a three-dimensional or depth. So that's the reason we have to drill so deep. So in order to be able to drill 50 or 100 feet into the water table, we need a bigger drilling equipment. And so we have to be able to, and then we have to case this well so we can take a water sample out of it. So this is the equipment that's required to do that process.
So you drill, if I may.
Yeah, please.
If you drill to a certain, so like, say you want to start at 25, 50 and so on, right? At each depth, you stop, and because it's cased, you're able to pull the water from that depth and then carry down deeper.
And they just keep pushing in pieces of pipe.
Pushing it
Yes.
down, so you've isolated everything above from contaminating down.
Yeah, yeah,
Thank you.
no problem.
Thank you, Mr. Lassen, Mr. Albert. Yes, Mr. Scarin.
What happens if we find excess of PFAS at depth? Say we can't find the bottom.
I'm stumped on that question. The idea is to go down into the water table, a certain, and try to find and grab the sample. So Weston has been working with the data that they have and trying to figure out what is the bottom that they have to go to. And this is where they're comfortable going to at this point.
Matt?
Please.
Again, not being the LSP technical expert, but PFAS compounds, they tend to float on water. So they're at their highest concentration at the top of a puddle or the upper level of the water table. And people who have done this work repeatedly find that out to be true as they go to depth into a water table, the concentration.
So as we go down, we should be finding lower concentrations of PFAS compounds. Well, that would be nice.
Yeah. And I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes on this because I think it's important both for the commission to have discussion and understanding of the amount of money and why we're spending this, but also for the public who may be watching or to understand that the airport commission remains committed to the PFAS investigation and that this doesn't just sort of get lumped in together with a $1,500 business fee approval. They're spending $500,000, close to $500,000 in a season as part of this investigation. With that, is there any further discussion on any of the items on Exhibit 1?
Well,
Hearing,
if
yes,
I may,
please. Yeah,
just
please.
Because you made that point of the cost and so
Yeah.
on, and that we're bearing it now. Does the FAA, I mean, who are we ultimately always responsible for this, or is there? Just to
So-
get out where the funding comes from.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may again.
Mr. Lassen.
So unfortunately, this is still all your own funding. There is no, at this point, there is no federal or state participation in this effort. Now, the federal government at the EPA level has been looking at setting some standards for PFAS nationwide. Will that ultimately come with reimbursement for this? I can't speak for that, but as of this point, unfortunately, there is no participation from the state or feds.
One more question.
Yes, please.
Mr. Lassen, do you have, through the chair, do you have any knowledge of how the Cape dealt with the contamination over there from the airbase?
So they are doing the same thing. They are spending lots of their own money, determining this, capping soil, similar to you are, putting in poet systems. I think Martha's Vineyard ended up putting in close to 200 poet systems over at the vineyard. They didn't have the ability to put in water lines the way the houses were spread out. So they are all struggling the same with you are. The Cape is an interesting story because just outside of the airport is the county-wide fire training area. So where they did significant fire training. So there's sort of multi contributors to the PFAS. So they are struggling to sort of determine share of liability. Camp Otis or Camp Edwards, whatever we call it, is still it was a federal property. So the federal government participates in some of that as a former military property. They have what's called a FUDS program, and the Army Corps of Engineers nationwide sort of handles federal participation when it's a federally a form of defense facility.
Got some fuzz background.
You have some FUDS background at the airport. Yes, you have some piles of stuff.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lasden.
Thank you.
That meets your questions. Any other discussion on exhibit 1? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve those contracts.
Leases, contracts and agreements?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Further discussion? Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Thanks, Mr. Carberg and Mr. Lasden. And with that, we will move on to pending matters. Mr. Carberg.
Thank you. I do not have an update for you on the capital approval process home rule petition, but with town meeting being complete, we will pick this up with town finance and we'll move forward. As a reminder, what we will be doing now that the home rule petition has passed, that could allow the airport some alternative means to meet deadlines for grant obligated projects, working with the town, working with the FinCom. We'll be working to set those processes. So if there's a future need to utilize that process, we have it set up. We won't be inventing the wheel while we're trying to ride it on the road. For a PFAS update, I do not have a lot of items for you in advance of our upcoming sampling. There's a table update in your packet. We are up to 80 samples taken from 540 private wells, and I have an update for connections to town water that is now at 27 from the 26 that is displayed. As we recently connected a home on Nantucket Valley Road to the water main. This was a home that had tested positive for the presence of PFAS, but was below 20 parts per trillion. We continue to monitor it either monthly or quarterly. It did have an exceedance. So we connected it and I believe the connection was complete Wednesday. Our consultant only needs to finish the site work. One item for your consideration, between the timing of Weston Solutions presentation, I believe it was last month, field work and delayed data analysis by the labs, we did not give you an interim status update. We had 2 scheduled per year, so you would receive a quarterly update. At this time, I'm not recommending that we do one in hindsight, but I wanted to bring it to your attention as the same situation could occur again, given the lag time between, or the delay in turnaround sampling results from the labs that they're experiencing and our anticipated next IRA update, which I believe is due at the end of August. There may or may not be an appropriate time to give an IRA status. I'm sorry, to give a interim status update, but that's something I'll continue to bring up for you, or bring up monthly.
as well as if you would, just in general, status of the ongoing work on the airfield, you know, it doesn't have to maybe be a full, as part of your manager's report or this line item. I think we're all interested, especially at the discussion we just had
Yeah.
on that contract to know, you actually got the rig over and those sort of things. Doesn't necessarily have to be all the findings, but I think we're all interested to know, where we're at and what's happening. Please,
Understood.
any questions on the PFAS update? And with that, we'll move on to ratify the Mass DOT grant award for AIP 80 to update the airport master plan study. This has a list 44,340 pending. Is it still pending? Okay, so we'll carry that forward. And we just had annual town meeting Saturday and last night. Mr. Cover.
Yeah, very briefly, all airport relevant appropriation and budget articles passed without discussion. I wanted to thank the community for their support and commission and staff for their ambassadorship in the community. I think that makes passage of ATM easier. So thank you.
Yep, thank you to the voters and the public. We certainly appreciate that support. We'll move on to item 12. We have a disclosure that was filed by a non-elected municipal employee, financial interest and termination by the appointing authority as required by general law, chapter 268A, section 19. Mr. Cover.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I wanted to lead off by saying, I don't know if you recall, but I certainly do, the period of time between 2020 and 2021, when we went through 14 different plumbers trying to get folks with PFAS contamination connected to water service. Between that memory, the current demand on tradespeople, and the airport being short-staffed and the maintenance position, my belief is that the airport needs all available options at our disposal. The option before you is a section 19, a statement of financial interest from Ms. Sansbury. Her husband is the owner of Gray Lady Plumbing and would be interested in doing business at the airport. However, he has a relationship clearly with a current airport employee. But this form is a mechanism with the state whereby the discussion of the disclosure in public session and approval by the airport commission would allow this work to go forward subsequent to airport staff putting in place the appropriate protocols where Ms. Sansbury would not request or process payment for her partner. I do not see any issue if the commission were to approve this work and can set up the appropriate protocols at the staff level. I believe this does require a formal adoption by the commission.
Any discussion or concerns?
I have none.
I think that it might be appropriate to have a motion that follows the language of the determination by the appointing authority, if someone wanted to make that. I think it's on the next page. Yeah, in the back right here. Someone wanted to make that motion.
Read this all out then.
I think that would be appropriate.
I'll make the motion to determine by the appointing authority as a appointing official as required by a general law 268 alpha 19. I reviewed the particular matter and this financial interest identified above by a municipal employee. I have determined that the financial interest is not so substantial as to be determined likely to affect the integrity of the services which the municipality may expect from the employee.
And is there a second?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. And finance, third quarter report, Mr. Carberg, still pending?
The third quarter report is still pending. I'd like to carry that forward. It won't be
Sure.
a long discussion. It's from our slow winter quarter, but I still believe it's interesting.
And we'll turn it over to your manager's report, please.
Thank you. To begin with projects, AIP projects. Taxiway Echo is at the punch list stage. We have some seating, some follow-up for species survey and silt sack work. Taxiway golf paving is underway and may conclude tomorrow. We still are on time to complete this project. I do not have any updates at this time on the master plan update or the geometry project. The HVAC work in the terminal, the training is an isolation valve installation, I believe, are both completed and will post project out by June 1st. For the southwest ramp extension, I'll continue to report under this item, particularly on aligning the ramp operations plan with the design schedule dates and those elements as they come about. Runway 624, this was a calendar 2026 project. I'm tabling it internally following our consultant selection at our August CIP meeting. I'd like to bring this back forward with a pavement condition inspection to satisfy the AIP eligibility requirements. I'll discuss the terminal and our RFP status below. Our ARC index change letter, I just wanted to acknowledge that you have approved the task order for design and bidding an ARC truck. We will not be billing against this work or taking the work on until we received our eligibility letter from the FAA. Apparently there's one person in the Washington office who handles all of these requests. There are a number of airports because of service increases from JetBlue or Avelo or another airline are upgauging their ARP index and asking for higher capacity or more trucks. The FAA is working on this and they're giving us indications that they're processing it. And they're working with us on our deadlines. So we'll continue to work with them. South Shore fence, I'm a little concerned about the pace of dune erosion. So this is probably a project I'm going to highlight with our new RFQ consultant selection and get moving this summer, fall. We'll keep it on this list. Our non-AIP projects, I'll continue to update on the crew quarters. I believe we already had a good discussion earlier. We are continuing to coordinate on the Surfside Area Water and Transportation Group. There will be an ongoing role between Mr. Laston and myself to communicate and work with town administration on drainage updates, construction access, especially along the Gate 30B boundary and Monahans Road. Hangar developments, I will take what we have from earlier in the agenda and update here in the future. I don't have an update for you at this time on lightning arresters of right-of-way research. And we are still waiting for the FAA to approve our ARF staffing resolution of not providing overnight ARF services. At this time, we are still staffing 24/7 with an overnight person on the shift. We're hoping to have the FAA sign off on our changes imminently. On the RFP bid status, we are issuing an IFB for automated door maintenance. It's available to the public today. Our IFB for our truck vehicle maintenance and repair was awarded to Global Art early this meeting. Thank you for that. We've received 2 proposals in response to our RFQ for the terminal optimization project. We are reviewing those internally and we will need to make an award. We received 3 bids for our IFB for landscaping maintenance service. We had to reject all due to submission technicalities and we'll repost the IFB. We have reviewed the qualifications for the RFQs for engineering and planning. Those are under review with contracts to be awarded at the next meeting in June. For lots J and K, which are behind Toscana and Island Barge in the bunker area. We've received NISA approval for the permitting. We are waiting for MEPA concurrence. It's just receipt of a letter. As soon as we have that letter, we can issue the RFP. And for the impound lots, we've begun that process by soliciting appraisal. We'll also utilize that appraiser that we retained for doing an update on a few other prices. For an operations update, the FAA inspection begins on May 30th. No change or update on memorandum of agreement with TSA on our checked baggage inspection system. If you've had a chance to see it, the summer outdoor boarding tent, the fabric started going up on Monday. The roof and most of the walls are up as of today. So that is important. Looking ahead to our spring and summer service. I don't have it in my PFAS update. I have it in the operations update. But yesterday, the FAA released its AFFF transition plan, which is its plan for assisting airports in converting from AFFF, which contains PFAS, to a fluorine-free foam. The FAA anticipates approving one or more foam-free alternatives this summer. They don't have an exact date. It's subject to review and publishing according to federal guidelines. It won't be an immediate transition for Nantucket or other airports. There's still a lot of unanswered questions as to how soon large quantities of commercial foam would be available. The training on the foam is different. The applicator actually responds differently to the fire with the fluorine-free foam than they do with a fluorine-based foam. And any existing trucks we would want to decontaminate prior to taking delivery of the new foam. It's also an item we would coordinate with taking delivery of a new truck. We wouldn't want to put an old style foam in a new truck just to decontaminate it. What I'm personally, or I think what initiative I'm hoping to do is to be an early adopter. I don't know if it's necessarily best to be the first adopter. I don't know if our timelines work with that, but it's a goal I'm going to carry forward into our operation and capital budgets. Be one of the first fluorine-free foam ARP operators in the region. The trade winds tent outside the FBO should be installed this week. We're kicking off our summer security meeting with TSA. Again, they do a great job at the local level, ramping up their staffing with TDY staff. 15 to 20 minutes on really busy days. I know the line may look long, but they push people through there, so it's appreciated. JetBlue starts Thursday with one operation per day. I believe that moves to 2 a day on the 18th. And then Delta and JetBlue are our two early entrants, each operating 4 or more aircraft by May 25th. So spring service will start fairly heavily for us, and it's coming soon. For statistics. For March, total operations were down 12.7% and down 10.6% year to date. Southwest ramp operations were down 6% in March. Enplanements were down 27% for March and remain up 1.7% year to date. Again, that's driven by summer traffic, with winter traffic being down. For Cape Air, I'll go through the 4 individual markets. Boston passenger market is up 34%, an increase in plane passengers. New Bedford is up 26%. The Vineyard is down 15%, and Hyannis is down 78%. So the gains in Boston and New Bedford are more than offset by the losses in Hyannis. Jet A gallons sold are up 14% in March and down 33% in April. 100 low lead is up 18% in March and up 8% in April. Freight is down 13% in March across all freight operators, and we had 0 noise complaints for March. For an additional item, and I'll move through it quickly, I think it's incredibly interesting. Commercial fuel sales. I've mentioned the concepts before, but I wanted to take a deeper dive into the commercial fuel business. Slide number, next slide. So for slide number 1, the figure that I'm showing are arriving aircraft over the course of the season. We've had very good data since 2016. Over the last 7 years, we've had a near doubling of regional jet arrivals across all operators. The other item is JetBlue is our dominant carrier. Approximately 50% of this market group's arriving aircraft. And I don't think that surprises anyone who's walked through the airport or driven outside airport road when they have 3 on the deck. Next slide. This slide shows total gallons uplifted or uplifted by the airline, sold by the airport by year. Again, JetBlue might have operational dominance, but that's not the same as fuel uplift dominance. Total fuel uplift has tripled over the last 7 years in this market sector, but JetBlue has actually dropped from a 32% market share to a 9% market share. So this is the grocery store question I gave, which is, wow, you guys must sell a lot of fuel to JetBlue. And my answer is no. Do you have 5 minutes? I'd love to explain it to you. Go to the next one. This slide is average up. So when an airline buys fuel, how much are they buying at once? Are you at the store buying 1 gallon of milk or 5 gallons of milk? In this market, fuel uplift is equipment dependent. So I have Delta, PAL, and United, UAL, as examples. And Delta initially operated only the 50-seat CRJ 200 in our market. Over the last 7 years, and very gradually and very slowly, but continually, they rotated in larger aircraft and operated those larger aircraft on a higher frequency. And they rotated in the CRJ 700 at 67 seats, and the 900 at 76 seats. And then the E175. This year, they'll be all E175 operations. So that's a gradual example. United is more of a stepwise fashion. After 2017, they discontinued the Q400, which was a real goofy looking aircraft, not fun to fly in favor of the Embraer E145. After 2020, the CRJ 550 replaced the E145. And these are both big jumps in average fuel uplift. Okay. So look at this one is what percentage of arriving aircraft have fuel? What's our capture rate? What amount of the market are we capturing? And there are a few things I like about this. The first is E190 can tanker in fuel. Bigger is not necessarily better. Bigger doesn't mean they take more fuel. Bigger means they bring in fuel and can bypass your market. JetBlue, obviously, they have an outsized focus on Boston and New York hubs and most likely the contract fuel that they can buy there. They also focus on, we may forget it sometimes on Nantucket doing a reverse fare, but they really did derive from an ultra low cost or low cost carrier, and they focused on low fares and low costs. It's probably worth them to maybe take a few minute delay in JFK to get cheaper fuel than to be on time and get fuel in Nantucket. When you compare that to American, it's not just that American's E175 has less tankering ability, but American traditionally runs at a very high load factor. They're full of people, they're full of bags, which reduces their weight carrying capacity, which reduces the amount of fuel that they can tanker in. They also operate on average longer flight legs than JetBlue. Go to Charlotte, Chicago, Philadelphia. Okay. So this is our normalized uplift. So you can divide the total uplift by the number of arriving aircraft. So when I get a route announcement or I get the schedule for the summer, I plan fuel needs based on these calculations. I know approximately by airline and their schedule how much fuel they're going to take. And we use these to set our delivery and our pricing strategies. And I do mean this in the best of terms. I always hear Mr. Beinecke quoted saying something along the lines, you're better off selling 1 steak than you are 10 hot dogs. And that's what I mean by trading up. When you calculate out the uplifts, and I have that below, the airport is better served uploading more fuel into fewer aircraft. That's my opinion. And I'd say, think about the process of fueling. A 500-gallon uplift takes about 20 minutes from the time the truck is dispatched by the FBO to the time the operator is back in the aircraft and driving away. Most of that time is spent driving, positioning the truck, walking over with the ladder and hose, getting prepped at the nozzle. Putting 500 extra gallons into the aircraft is just holding on to the button for an extra 2 minutes, minute and a half. The revenue increment to the airport is $600 a minute in that kind of situation. By some calculations, if we're not fueling 50 or more gallons at a time, we're not making money on the fuel set. And then the last slide, big picture. And I talk about it in terms of. Okay, my last point. For air service development, we're going to backfill the environmental coordinator position that's out for advertisement. This person typically does air service development. I did it in that previous position. Typically, there's a conference, sometimes there's a consultant, and that costs the airport the order of $10,000 to $25,000 per year. But the goal of that isn't necessarily to increase the number of operations or the number of passengers. It's to identify the operating opportunities that make sense for the airport and our customers. I love JetBlue. I love the service they provide and the passenger uplift they bring, but my big air service development priority is bringing back Dulles on United because of what that aircraft offers us. That in a nutshell is the commercial fuel. I think it's as interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Any
good question.
questions? Yeah, I was gonna open it up, please.
So the fuel comparison price between us and JFK or Boston, where do we reside in that? Because I know GA wise, we're pretty competitive. You're like, it's no big advantage for me to like go somewhere else and get fuel. You're very competitive that way today, so it's nice.
What I can't tell you though is the contract price, what was actually negotiated with an FBL on the different airfields. We offer a retail price and a retail price. The price is the price.
They probably hedge all that fuel too, that at that price, so that they're locked in. They can better protect their rates.
No, I admire Noah's ability and love of statistics.
Yeah,
It's a little bit of a
absolutely.
different twist than we're used to. And it's a nice drill down.
Yeah.
We certainly understand where the money is a little bit better
Most
as a
definitely.
result of this. And nothing like math to
Nothing
explain
to
the
make it
program.
clear.
that's very helpful. Thank you, Noah. Appreciate the emphasis.
I think I'd like to see us pull some of this as well out and be sure that it's incorporated with the master planning process. Because you have really pulled out some of the numbers in terms of the change of fleet mix and number of operations. That when you look at that over the last 6 years, it's just sort of seems like a blink of an eye. It's all going so fast, but that's significant growth there. I think it's important that we consider that in terms of infrastructure needs, for the airport as as we look to the master plan. So thank you. And with that, commissioner comments. Oh, did you personnel report?
Personnel
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Happy to report Claudette White and Rohan McCarthy have accepted full-time custodian position. And Connor Allen is a transfer from the sewer wastewater department and has accepted the maintenance building systems specialist position. So we welcome them aboard.
Nice.
Great. Commissioner comments.
How many spots do we have open for new employment that we haven't been able to fill?
Including the environmental coordinator, we have 6 right now, 4 in maintenance, 1 in operations. And the environmental coordinator position, which is still recently advertised.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Have we, or have you looked into any kind of contract maintenance to help fill in with that void in the maintenance department? I had to do that for a while myself, that's why.
So yes, the IFB for landscaping services, the IFB for ARF maintenance services. That's part of our strategy. My hope is we can address all of that through IFBs, and in the short term, I haven't looked at any longer term.
Anyone else? Stop them.
No,
I just had one is we just went through that statistics report and are we looking good as we won't have another meeting before Memorial Day? For fuel capacity and being topped off and comfortable as we're starting to head into the season, if we're in good shape there.
Yes, so Preston and Skylar Sveteras have done a great job managing that. We took a delivery of Jet A this morning. I believe we're tapped out in low lead. Again, we don't sell a lot of low lead, but we fill up now at avoids switching out a Jet A reservation in the summer, for low lead. And I don't think we can take another truck yet.
Okay,
So we're going in top.
One bomb. And jet fuel bombs.
that's great.
We'll be full.
Thank you. It's much appreciated. This is the time to do that. Once you do have the appraisal, you had mentioned the impound lot, please do keep us posted on how, whatever that we may need to do from a commission level or any discussion we want to have on that. To move that forward, I think I'd have another revenue stream there and be good. Hearing nothing further, is there a motion, sorry, public comment again for any items that were not on the agenda? Yes,
I
Ms.
don't know
Flaherty.
if this is appropriate to know, gift shop, is that still not? I get a lot of questions.
The gift shop is still under the Crosswind operational lease. We could potentially approach them and see if they have any realistic plans of operating the gift shop. Mr. Scale isn't here to represent his interest. And I don't want to say this the wrong way, but I can't think of the other words. I don't think it's been a priority of the airport to approach him to see if he would give it up or to take it away, the operation.
Anything further? Thank you. With that, we would entertain a motion to go into executive session for general law, chapter 30A, section 21A, to review the executive session minutes enumerated on the agenda. Clause 3, discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, where the chair has determined that open session may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the airport commission. And clause 3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation regarding Walsh, where the chair has determined an open session may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the airport commission, not to return to open session. Is there such a motion?
So move.
Made and seconded. Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you all. Nice to see you all.
It's nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Take care. Thank you for your
Thank
help.
you very much.
Appreciate it.
Anytime.
Well, I'm still on. Okay, thank you.
You were in the Navy